take that frown and turn it upside down. He says, yes, I know, cliche. He says, but I was part of creating that cliche, and so I'm going to stick with it.
Welcome to Talking to the Dead with Janet Kubik. I'm your host, Joe Oliva, and here is my friend and your friend, Janet Kubik. Hello, Janet.
Hello, Joe, and everybody else. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I loved that intro because it was like a little bit of a throwback to season 1 where I got to be everybody's friend.
Yes.
So I'm glad to be everybody's friend again. Yay.
But it had the pacing of season 2, but the flavor of season 1.
Right. There we go.
Yeah, I like to mix it up. How are you doing, Janet?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens today. As everybody knows, we just sort of fly by the seat of our pants around here. We did have a bit of a conversation about the fact that there's so much heavy going on in the world right now.
Right.
And a lot of the messages coming forward are really impactful and powerful and profound. And, you know, a lot of these big concepts and things like that. So I think you and I are both kind of hoping today might be a little lighter. So we'll see.
We actually noted, you and I noted, that the last few episodes that we recorded were pretty heavy, even though we had some guests pop in like Mary Magdalene and things like that. The messages were like heavy.
Yeah.
And we thought it'd be nice if we had something a little lighter today. This is not really a light show, but a little bit lighter, right?
Yeah. So we'll see. Already a couple of things have popped forward. So yesterday when I started thinking about today, and knowing that we were going to get together, I heard the name Charlie Chaplin. So I'm very curious to see if Charlie Chaplin happens to show up. And then also this morning, I felt like Myrtle was kind of stepping in, and Myrtle is my guide for those of you who are sort of new to this platform. And she was saying something along the lines of, you know, there's been a lot of asks of us lately. As we're going through this sort of upheaval and shift into the new age is what they keep kind of talking about. There's a lot of sort of directives like, you know, you might be better off if you go this direction, or if you sort of learn this lesson or take this information and put it into practice. And so she referred to it as a lot of asks. It feels like we're being asked to do a lot. So I think there was just a sense of appreciation for that, you know, we're listening and we're trying to take it in as best we can. But today, I think they might go a little bit easier on us today. Maybe, I don't know. You never know.
Right. I texted you yesterday to confirm this this call that we're doing, this podcast, this YouTube show. And you mentioned Sir Charlie Chaplin. You said Charlie Chaplin, but he still is, I guess, a sir.
A sir, okay.
He was knighted. I didn't know that.
Oh, wow.
Well, you know, the people say always, oh, Sir Paul McCartney, right? Like that was correct. But for this guy, this is Charlie Chaplin, right? That's just like, I didn't ever know that he was a sir. But yeah, so I had the opportunity, unlike most of the other times, to actually look up his bio a little bit and learn a little more about him, because he wasn't really in my time. But everyone knows Charlie Chaplin. Everyone knows the hat and the mustache and the cane, and right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And the silent, you know, but the vaudevillian type of, you know, performing and that sort of thing. It just made me think too when he said sir, because if I remember back correctly, I think Robin Williams wasn't a sir technically. I'm using quotations here, but he came through as Sir Robin Williams.
Yes.
Anyway, just a throwback to season 1.
I think Robin was foreshadowing Sir Charles Chaplin coming forward.
Yes, could be.
Yeah. So is it Charlie? Is he coming forward, or does Myrtle want to speak first?
Let me see here. It's actually interesting because the energy is really quite calm and really pretty quiet right now. Usually as we get started talking, I can start to feel things amping up in my body. And to this point, it's been quite quiet. So I'm going to take a second here and see. I do feel like I'm getting distracted, which is always a good sign if we're waiting to hear from Spirit. And yeah, now I'm really distracted. So give me a second. So there's a gentleman energy. Yep. And he says, I wanted to come forward to brighten your day, to give you a laugh. He says, that's really what I was all about. or really what my work was about. He says, as we've come to learn through all these messages of these others who have stepped forward, how we work or the work we do is not necessarily all of who we are. But the work that I did was intended to make people smile. It was intended to bring joy. And so much of that is needed as we go through this big shift and transition in humanity and evolution, as my colleagues, oh, that's cute, my colleagues, he says, would call it or refer to it. He says, we have to remember balance. And what's important with balance is that we engage in the joyful and playful energies, as well as the more learned and studious energies of change. Laughter is always the best medicine. He says, and I know that the way things are in the world at this time feel very topsy-turvy. So much is being brought to the surface in order to be purged. And he says, almost exposed first before that purge can even happen. And as much, again, as my colleagues would bring forward these offerings as to how to tune into your inner knowingness, how to turn into what you already know inside you as being the way to live or to be as humans in this experience. He says, it's my job to bring the laughter. It's my job to remind you that the best way to support yourself as you do this good work, this great work, he says, is to do it with a smile on your face. Now, no, he says, I'm not trying to tell you that you're going to smile all the time. He says, I lived my own life in the human experience, and I'm very well aware that that is not the case, that there will be many, many times where you will frown. But sometimes on the odd occasion, when you have that opportunity, take that frown and turn it upside down. He says, yes, I know, cliche. He says, but I was part of creating that cliche, and so I'm going to stick with it. Okay, and then you sort of paused. Joe, do you have anything to interject at this point?
No, but it's funny that you mentioned, I think we've mentioned this in a few other podcasts. I think it might have been Whitney Houston or Robin Williams about how these celebrities, there's more to them than that sort of one thing that they're known for. Like he was known for, like you said, silent films. And then because I had the opportunity to look up his bio, he was a very complicated, he had a very complicated history.
Really?
I had no idea. I was like you, like I thought, oh, Charlie Chaplin, he's sort of one of the original slapstick guys, like with Laurel and Hardy and the Three Stooges, that kind of era. Very like his parents were split when he was a baby.
Oh,
and
wow.
then at 6 years old, his mother was singing on stage and he knew all the songs. And she got what they thought was laryngitis. And so he went out to finish the set for her. And that's how things got started. Yeah.
As you say that, Joe, he just gave me what I call the validation tingles, where my body, I can feel like this sort of goosies or goosebumps, usually on my left arm, and I felt them sort of on my left arm and through my back too. So
I think he was the original A-list celebrity.
Oh, wow.
I think. I mean, it's not written anywhere, but when you look at what we call an A-lister today, like someone who can like pack a theater and like make tons of money for a movie company, he was making $500,000 a year back in before World War I, so like 1917, 1918. That would have been like huge in today's dollars because any movie he was in, people just ran to the theater to go watch it, right?
He says they were in such desperate need. He said they were in such desperate need of a laugh, of an opportunity to kind of let go of the real world. And that's sort of, again, in a quotation, air quotes kind of a thing, to let go of what was happening in the real world. And he's talking about escapism. There was something about needing to just escape into laughter and escape into joy. And he says, the trick is what we're trying to do now. And when he says we, he sort of is indicating like the collective of spirit. What we're trying to do is shift things so that reality is joyful. Reality equals or qualifies with laughter. He says it's gotten too heavy. too much in the dark. And he said, just like back in that time, there needed to be more light, more chances for people to escape. He says, but we don't want you to feel the need to escape your reality anymore. We want to shift and change your reality into a joyful experience. So there is no need to escape the human experience, but instead to embrace it and dive into it and enjoy it. And it's almost like he started saying, like, dig deeper into it. It's all, he says, it's like you all kind of keep one foot on the ground and one foot off the ground because of everything that humanity has been through, and with it being so tumultuous and trying, those who walk as humans are afraid to put both feet on the ground and really embrace the human experience. So this is what needs to change. He says it's completely understandable given everything that humanity has been through, and again, for great purpose, but he says blah blah blah, that's getting back into the more detailed workings of the world and perhaps a heavier topic. But in fact, what is important is to remember that the human experience is an opportunity for life. It's an opportunity to experience living in another way, in another form from what you're used to when you're here. So what needs to happen is a better balance so that you can put both feet firmly on the ground and enjoy your time living in this existence instead of being afraid to be there. There's been so much fear. He says there's been so much fear. And that's what we're trying to, I almost heard eradicate, but then he's like, but that, I get the sense that won't ever really truly be the case. But he's talking about eradicating irrational fear. He says, when you experience trauma, you become afraid of everything. And he said, indeed, yeah, there are times, where fear is of benefit to you for survival. For example, if there's a grizzly bear banging on your back door, then fear's your best friend or fear's your ally in that moment or at that time. But it's all the other stuff. He says, it's all those other worries and concerns for things that haven't yet happened and likely never will, but consume so much of your time and your energy and really prevents you from putting both feet on the ground and enjoying the experience. It's trying to get the word, I'm not exactly sure if it's limits, but I think it's another word, but the sense of it is limits. It limits your ability to soak in the good stuff, because there's so much good stuff. He says there's so much beauty, there's so much positivity, but when you're constantly living in a state of fear, that positivity can't get to you because you're shrouded in fear. So we need to clear the fear, get rid of the fear, and allow the beauty, the joy, the positive energies to seep into your being so that you can put both feet on the ground and enjoy your human experience. It truly is a unique offering. And he sort of laughs because, Joe, you and I were talking briefly about aliens before we started this podcast.
We were. Yeah, I have a stat for you after, but go ahead.
Okay, cool. But I feel like he's sort of saying that of the experiences that are available to a soul or a spirit, this is a really unique one. And to this point in human evolution, it's been a really challenging one. I think this has been referenced before too in one of the other podcasts.
Yeah.
So he says, what we want to do is to create a more optimal experience for the souls who choose to live in the human experience. He says, I know. This all seems far out. It all seems almost unbelievable or unfathomable. He said, but what's going to be really important in moving forward is to open your minds, is to allow all those limitations that have been built up by those experiences and those traumas and those fears to just sift away so that you can open your mind to the vastness of what exists, not only in your world, your experience, but what exists externally as well, because indeed, my friends, you are not alone.
Yeah.
And he says it with like a frivolity, like a fun kind of feeling. Like it's not ominous in any way. It's not judgmental in any way. It's, it's really pretty cool. I'll pause there because he's sort of gotten quiet, and Joe, I'll come back to you.
Okay, come back to me. You want to talk about aliens, or do you want to talk about Charlie Chaplin's granddaughter?
Oh, I would love to hear about Charlie Chaplin's granddaughter.
She's an alien. No, I'm just kidding. Una Chaplin, Oona Chaplin. She's an actor. He must be very
really?
proud. Well, I guess I don't know if he has pride where he is, but yeah, she was in Game of Thrones. Have you seen Game of Thrones?
I'm ashamed to admit. I shouldn't be ashamed, but I'm nervous to admit that no, I have not, because I might face some judgment for that. But
That's
no,
okay.
I have not seen Game of Thrones.
She had a kind of key role, not the biggest role, but like a key role. So I'm going to say, spoiler alert for anybody listening. You have to fast forward about 60 seconds right now, or 30 seconds, starting now. She's the girl that gets stabbed in the Red Wedding.
Oh, that sounds very dramatic.
It was very dramatic. It was not comedic at all, like her famous grandfather's roles usually were. But yeah, so I just find it interesting when someone, a child or grandchild or great grandchild in some respects, picks up sort of where their father, mother, grandparent left off. I always find that kind of cool.
Yeah. And when you were talking about that show, and you sort of made mention that it wasn't, funny or it wasn't comedy, he chimed in again with the word escapism. He said, even though he says it's funny because media, or what we put out there, what we celebrities or media puts out there, is a reflection of the human experience. And he says, so that's why there's so much violence. That's why there's so much drama and trauma that is put forward on the airwaves, is how it comes forward, put forward on the airwaves, because that's been humans' experience. So that is a reflection of humanity's experience. He says, but unfortunately, it's not helping in a way. He says, it is helping in a way as we process what we've been through. It's important to understand as a race our history, the process of evolution, the progress of evolution, he says, which is about to really take off and set records, he says, the progress, the amount of progress that's going to happen. He says, so as we watch these shows or offerings, he calls them, through the media or through the entertainment industry, he says, we're having a chance to reflect on our experiences. He says, but in doing so, sometimes it reiterates. If we don't look at it with a distanced lens, with a lens of knowing and understanding that circumstances can be different now, we can change, we can choose new ways of being. He says sometimes it can reiterate old patterns or old habits or old processes that really aren't not serving us well or serving you well, so to speak, at this time. So he says this is where media needs to take a step back. This is where my fellow brothers and sisters and cohorts in the entertainment industry need to take a fresh new look at what is being offered to the world. Not just a chance to reflect on what has been, but an opportunity to see where things can go.
I find that,
wow.
if I may interject, Sir Charles.
Of course.
I find that we now, because of the internet, have at our disposal whatever you want. If you want to laugh, infinite number of comedic movies, sitcoms that you can find, YouTube videos, TikTok videos, which I know you're not a huge fan of TikTok. For your kids.
Yeah. Let's just say I'm not a very knowledgeable in TikTok, and I've just happened to pop on a few times and kind of went, whoa.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's amazing things that are on TikTok.
Whatever you want.
That's me being very politically correct.
Yeah, and a mother, and concerned about what your kids are seeing. I get that. But if you want violence, I mean, there's a lot of violent video games. There are violent movies. Whatever you want is at your disposal. I come from the music industry, as you know. That's the difficult thing about the music industry, is that you used to have to try and compete in a very narrow space. And now
Yeah.
the music industry is competing with the video game industry, with the movie industry, everything all at the same time. People only have 2 ear holes, right? So they can only listen to one podcast at a time. Oh, thank you for listening to Art, by the way.
Yeah, thank you if you're listening. Thank
They
you.
could you can only watch one basketball game at a time. I mean, maybe you could watch two, but you get what I'm saying, right? And so music is now competing with all of those different things. It's getting anyway. Point is, everything is available. If someone wants to laugh, they can laugh.
Too true. There is so much more that is available to us. And he says, but even with that being the case, he says, I'm holding those accountable who have the biggest voices. He says, even though there's so much available to people now, he said, there are still those in the industry, an industry that I helped to create, that have big voices. And it's those people who need to shift the way they're thinking. It's those people who need to really start to set some new examples, bring forward new ideas. Hold on one second. They need, that's why I couldn't get it. They need to revisit their ratings.
Their ratings?
Yeah, that's exactly how it came forward. They need to revisit their ratings.
Can you explain, Sir Charles?
Yeah, I'm very curious what he means.
Yeah, I don't quite. I mean, I could interpret it, but if he's there, just tell us what you mean by that.
He says they need to not be so worried about their ratings. He says, yeah, too often ratings are what propel them or drive them forward in terms of the programming that they create. But what needs to become more important is the value of the content. That has to become the priority. He said, because feeding people things that they are sort of fixated on is not necessarily what's in their best interest. It's weird. It's like I have this like dual layer conversation going on in my head right now. So there's a lot of information and I'm trying to sift through it, because one of the levels or layers they're talking about is if people are drawn to violence and pain and shows like that, then sometimes they're almost taking advantage by continuing to promote that. And it's not necessarily helping the viewer to move through it or past it. They're connecting to it for reason, but it's almost if you dwell in it, then you're not having the chance to kind of move beyond it or through it or past it. So if the ratings are indicating, for example, that a murderous drama is the highest rated show, that's an indication that there are a lot of people in pain, or that there are a lot of people connecting to or relating to what they're seeing. And he says, now, I mean, we could get very in depth in this conversation in terms of, connections to past life experiences and the past traumas of history. So they may not even be aware of it in this particular lifetime, but they are drawn to it for reason. And he said, again, it's a chance to kind of reflect and connect with those experiences. But if we do too much of it, then we don't move out of it. We don't move past it or beyond it. So this is why there best be more positivity, more hope, more education in how to live in a better way. Let go of the past. Harping on it's not going to serve you well. Realize that you can move forward. And that's going to be, he says, a big shift for the entertainment industry, because they are so they are so like powered by ratings and what people are connecting to. So it's going to be like, it comes across as if it's going to be sort of like this leap of faith where these big media moguls or whoever he's referring to say, we're going to stop putting all that out there. and we're going to go in a new direction, and we're going to start putting more programming that gives people the opportunity to smile. And I just heard to heal, because oftentimes sort of sitting in your misery, so to speak, I hear, isn't giving you the chance to heal. Wow, this is a very interesting topic. He sort of paused.
It is interesting. It's interesting because I've found sometimes when you look at the history of a show, like let's just say a TV show, for example, that didn't have great ratings at the beginning. Like I remember the story of Rob Reiner, who was championing Seinfeld before it was Seinfeld. And he was kind of trying to push it forward. And I think Paramount was saying, no, it's not funny, or it's whatever it is. And he convinced them by saying, I'll make this other movie for you, but you have to do a pilot season of Jerry Seinfeld's show, because I believe in it. And he just believed in it. He just thought it was unique and funny in its own right, and didn't. Yeah, I mean, it didn't have the ratings. Seinfeld was relatively unknown. He had been on like Carson or whatever, but he was relatively unknown comic before Seinfeld. But it just took that one guy to say, this is different, and I believe in it. It takes someone to believe in it, right? It's like any getting back to the music industry, any band, there's usually someone that in the entertainment industry that says, I know they're an unknown act, but I believe in them, and they sign them or do whatever it takes to get them to the next level, right?
Yeah, and as you're talking, he's bringing forward the word dwell. He says we no longer need to dwell in what once was. What we need to do now is start to showcase and highlight the new ideas, the new way. And he says, as your guides would say, he says that it's not new at all. It's the way it was intended, and then we've gone through this process of shifting through humanity. But the original intentions of this experience to create a peaceful, joyful, healthful opportunity for souls or spirits to live. And he says, so in doing that, we need to let go of a lot. And he says, and of course, I'm speaking to the entertainment industry because it was my industry. And he says, indeed, Joe, I was a pillar. I was a launching point, so to speak, for the whole concept or idea of celebrity. He said, before me, people had to read about celebrities, again, in air quotes, in books or through stories. It was through storytelling. He said, I gave them someone to see. Right. I was a literal person that they could see and connect with. So indeed, I was, I want to say pillar, but it feels like there's another word and I'm missing it, what it is. But he was obviously feels like he's insisting or sort of insinuating that he was very essential. Haha, essential. Inside joke.
he was like I said, I think he was one of the first. He was an A-list celebrity before they put them on lists, right?
Yeah.
He was as big as it gets in Hollywood when Hollywood was just sort of starting out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he says it was a whole new, is the word paradigm? Is that the word I heard? I don't even know if that fits. But it's what I heard, so I'm going to say it.
That makes sense, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because it was a whole new paradigm. It was a whole new shift into accessibility to others as sort of role models or ideologies, or trying to kind of get it, like where we would look to these celebrities as being the ideals is how it seems he's saying it. Yeah, and he said it was actually like a very slippery slope. And he says, as my other colleagues have brought forward, it created a very interesting dynamic. It sort of created this ideal for people to try to live up to. And he said, but where it kind of failed in a way is when it didn't highlight the fact that we were still just people. Yeah. That we had these jobs where, everything looked great. He says, kind of like that Facebook thing. That's funny. Where everything looks a certain way or shows a certain side or aspect of what's being shown to the world, but it didn't allow for us to be known in our totality or our entirety. And he says, and this is another shift that needs to transpire in regards to the entertainment industry itself. People need to be able to see people and realize that even with the job they have being on screen or on cameras, that they're still just people. Because it's created this hierarchy, he says, of people. It's created a need to be something more than or other than what you are. It's created these ideals that need to be achieved or attained. And he says, when really the ideals are a mirage. He says, we're all flawed. Even the most picture perfect celebrity or movie star, he says, even myself, we're all flawed. So we need to change how people, how human beings are represented, are shared, are shown to others, or shown to the world, or shared with the world. It needs to be more real. Okay, he sort of paused there. Oh, sorry, wait a minute. Because then he's sort of looping back here. And he says, and with that, real needs to change too.
What needs to change too?
Real, R-E-A-L.
Oh.
And I think he's looping back to where he talked about the idea that our reality was so weighted. It was so dark because of everything we've been through, all the traumas of humanity and tribulations of humanity. Reality needs to change too. And he talked earlier, I think, about the idea that we need to shift into something more positive. We need to let go of some of the negative stuff we've experienced and make things more positive, so that laughter and joy and giggles and silliness. And he's sort of showing me, it's like, it's so cool. All of a sudden, like a movie just turned on in my mind. And he's like doing that little cane walk thing where he's twirling his cane and he looks kind of like a penguin. And he says that needs to be something that exists in everyday life, not just on a TV or movie screen. Oh, wow. Okay, he's paused.
It's interesting because the other day I was thinking about, I was watching some show, I think it was Sarah Silverman's podcast, which is, I think, very funny. It's dirty, but she's dirty, but it's funny. And she was talking about how Jewish people are known for the sense of humor, right? And I found that sometimes groups of people or cultures or whatever, when they have nothing, this is not the right wording, but like nothing else to live for. Like, it's just like they're poor. Like I find certain Italian people very funny because coming out of World War II, it's like all they had was to make each other laugh. They didn't have TV and they didn't have anything else. Similar with Jewish people, post-Holocaust, it's like they were sort of in a bad place as a group. And it's like one thing we can do is entertain each other, make each other laugh. So a lot of great music comes out of, if you look at the music that came out of the African-American culture in the States, amazing, right? They didn't have anything else, comedy, music, and sort of entertaining each other as opposed to trying to make it big on a screen somewhere.
Yes, and as you say that, Joe, he does step in. He says, let me try to connect in, because he said it while you were talking, and I want him to reiterate it exactly the way he said it. It's time for laughter to be a way of life as opposed to a remedy for the ills of the world. And then that was it. And actually, to be honest and clear, that I don't think was him. That felt like a different energy. It felt like more of what I would call a guide energy. So I don't want to say that was him saying that, because it didn't feel like it was him. I feel like it's very in line with what he's talking about, but it was another energy. Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. Like, wouldn't it be nice to just engage in entertainment and joy and laughter because that's what we just get to do, as opposed to because we're trying to escape reality? or
Right.
we're trying to heal ourselves from all the trauma we've been through. It would be amazing if that joy and positivity and frivolity, I think was a word he used or whatever at one point, if that was just the way life was.
Right. And I think getting back to what he was saying about how celebrities are just regular people, I think we're seeing more and more of that as they have social media accounts and things like that. I know sometimes they are like curated and they have a social media person and a PR person, but some of them don't. And those, to me, I think you can mostly tell. And those are always my favorite people because you're getting the real authentic things. And I've seen some backlash on them too. Like, you know, the latest Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot is her name.
Yes.
You've seen her, right? Like, you know what she looks like.
Yeah.
So did you hear about her Imagine fiasco?
No.
So at the beginning of the pandemic, she got a bunch of her celebrity friends around the world, right? And she started singing John Lennon's Imagine into her iPhone, or maybe she had a professional camera. And so she starts to sing it, and then another celebrity picks it up and they sing the next line, and it kind of, they sing the whole song. And then there was, you think, oh, she's trying to do a positive thing, right? That's what I thought. Like,
that's how I'm interpreting it. Yeah.
Right. The backlash was tremendous. Like, oh, yeah, you're leading a tough life in the pandemic with a pool behind you and this big mansion, right? And it's like, she can't do any, what was she supposed to do? Nothing? Or, you know, what is she supposed to do? So she's just being herself. And I think, oh, she's doing this nice thing, right? And then she got such backlash. I felt so bad for her. Eventually, people defending her started coming out of the woodwork, right? And saying, like, leave her alone. She didn't do anything. Intent matters, right? That's why when someone says a joke, it can be like, you have to think, what was their intent in saying the joke? Like, were they trying to offend someone, or did they just find it funny and not see the other side of that joke or whatever? But anyway, I don't think her intention was to offend anybody and say, look at the pool behind me and look at my mansion. She was just trying to bring a little light into the world. And boy, she got stepped on so bad.
Well, but that is a perfect example of how reactionary we are right now. There's so much trauma. There's so many wounds that are surfacing. And, you know, Spirit says to me all the time, I have so many pieces of channeled writings on this, about the idea that a person's reaction or their opinion is just a reflection of their experience. It's a reflection of their wounds. It's a reflection of what they're carrying inside of them. And every one of us, we've talked about this before, is having a unique experience. And so when one person puts something out into the world, it will never have the opportunity to be all positive or all negative or to be accepted by everyone, because everyone's going to accept it, react to it in a way that reflects them. And I think that's such a huge piece in moving forward for all of us in realizing that we can be authentic. The best way to be is to just be ourselves, because there is no pleasing everyone.
Right.
There is no right hairstyle. There is no right, and I'm using my air quotes, there is no right way to look. There is no right thing to believe. I mean, on a deeper level, you know, if we want to go there too.
It's about what the individual, it's individual. We talked about individuality so many times on this podcast, and just sort of one-on-one, right?
Yeah. And I love what you said too about the fact that it goes along with intention, because often when people are trying to tear someone else down, they're doing it with a malintent, or they're speaking from a place of pain. I mean, really, if you think about it, if you were a happy, healthy person, why would you ever feel the need to criticize or condemn another person?
Yeah, and getting back specifically to Gal Gadot, there's even a way of saying not a good idea. Like there's just the vitriol, like, you're a terrible person for posting this online. Or it's like, you know what? Maybe celebrities should step aside right now, because the average Joe, pardon the pun, is dealing with a situation right now. So there's just ways of saying it. One is just full of anger and hate, and one is just like, how about I don't, and you can unfollow her on whatever you're following her on, YouTube or whatever it is, and just like, and move on. I always find it interesting on YouTube, those people that will type and type and type. I mean, we don't get those on your channels or podcasts because you're awesome.
Oh,
but
yay.
But you go to a band, and someone will just give the most scathing remarks about them. Like, why are you listening to them? Why are you listening for 4 minutes to something that you hate? I don't get it.
Right. Well, people are just so desperate to have an outlet to release their anger, their frustration, their pain. Right. So people will listen to it just so that they can go on and have somewhere to let go of their stuff or release their stuff. And, we all need to release our stuff, but we need to make sure that we're not doing it at the expense of others. I mean, there's a lot of ways that, we can release things that are in us or heal our own wounds or deal with our own issues or however you want to call it, that don't require us to damage other people. And I think that's, again, so we've sort of slipped back a little bit into these sort of bigger picture perspectives and ideas for moving forward, how we can change, the negativity, the level of pain, the level of trauma, the level of hurt that's being caused in our world. There are ways to do it. And, with her offering, there might have been thousands or even millions. I don't know how many people viewed it, but there could have been
millions.
Yeah, there could have been a large percentage of people who appreciated it and loved it. And so I love that she was authentic and she did it, and her intention was what it was. And I think, good on you for doing that. And it's sad that we still live in a day and an age where being authentic sometimes means you're going to get attacked. But I think the more we work through the process of healing, the more we start letting go of where we've been and start moving into where we can go, that's going to start happening less and less. And being authentic is going to be the accepted way of living. Hopefully.
Cool. This might have to be a 2-part episode. We've been going on and on.
I didn't know how long it was, but yeah, we've had a lot to say.
Does Sir Charles have anything left to say that he wants to say, or anybody else?
So the image that I see in my mind is him tipping his hat. So it's that sort of it almost looks like is the right word, bowler hat.
Yeah.
Like sort of that round top hat, and he's tipping it off, and it's something about he's thankful for allowing his time, or him to take the time on the airwaves. I think he said that before, something about on the airwaves. So he's just appreciative of his time to come forward and share with us today. And he says, chin up. He says, chin up. And he's doing this whole cane routine. I mean, like he's showing me his routine, and he's tapping his hat with the end of his cane. And he says, just remember that laughter is the best medicine. And he says, and I will leave you with that.
Okay. Thanks for popping in, Sir Charles. Sir Charles Chaplin. Janet, anything else to add?
No, I think hopefully, I know I smiled a lot more in this episode than I feel like I have before. So hopefully that's a good sign. And I don't think I cried once. So I think maybe we got the lighter episode we were hoping for, but at the same time, again, I think this is potentially the way it's always going to be with Spirit, is a very profound and important and is the word poignant? Another
poignant, I think, has a bit of people use it to mean like important, right? But I think it has a tone of sadness, poignant. And
you know what? I would sort of say that fits, because I think it's still this sense of, wow, we've just been through so much.
Right.
We're going through so much. and they wanted to bring forward sort of a lighter side of it and give us some more positive energy, but they're not discounting or discrediting what we are going through in humanity at this time. So I think poignant maybe actually is the word.
Perfect. We didn't get to talk about aliens. Maybe we can do that on a future episode.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay. Okay. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share with someone who you think might like this content. Or they might just like, they're a huge Charlie Chaplin fan or a huge Game of Thrones fan. So, and also make sure to visit janetkubik.com if you haven't done so already. Sign up for Janet's email list, and we will send you an occasional email when a podcast comes out or when other cool things are happening.
Awesome.
Bye, Janet.
Thank you, Joe. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Spirit.